do have an icon today right in front of me, Mr. Jayanth Sharma, CEO of toehold. Very excited to speak to you about your journey, Mr. Jayanth, and thank you for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you.
Jayanth, you're known as an icon in the wildlife photography. So, what exactly does wildlife photography mean to you?
Very interesting question. So I think from a very young age, I am introduced to photography. So photography is not my passion. I keep telling this everywhere. I am passionate about the wild, about the wilderness, about nature, about animals, birds, insects, snakes, frogs, everything. So wildlife photography to me is a reflection of my passion. It's a medium of expression. I feel it's not really wildlife photography that is special about me. It's the passion towards wildlife that is special. And wildlife photography is like to a poet and a pen.
Wow, that's a fantastic answer. Well, I must ask you one question. When did this passion start? I mean, if you're saying that yes, you need to capture those moments and you need to get into the zone of wildlife or any photography skills that you say is very important. So when did this start?
I started involving myself in nature and wildlife as a teenager. And in the early 20s, I started working in the IT industry, and that's when I started going out every weekend to Pandipur, Nagarjuna, Nantindu, and places like those. That's when I realized with my photography background in the house, my father is a photographer, and my passion for wildlife, I could marry the two, and then I found success very quickly because I didn't have to learn too many things about photography, and I was always passionate about wildlife. So even from my school days, I was always an outdoors person. I used to be in the jungles. I come from a school called CFPR in Mysore. We had our own little jungle. We would go out like outlaws in the afternoon. And nature was always a passion. It just amplified and became when I got into my 20s.
They say that nature teaches you a lot of things. So how have you grown midst of nature and wildlife? If you can describe.
Sure. I think I can write a book on this topic. So many things to think about. But one of the important things that I learned when I started spending more time in the jungle is, of course, there is a time in life where everything has its glory, and then there's a time when sun sets on everything and everybody. Likewise, let's say if you're talking about a very famous tiger in Bandipur or Kamini, there will be a time in that tiger's life when it will be in its prime, but then it will go down and it will set a very horrific end to the tiger's life because of various obvious reasons. Likewise, with human beings also, there will be a time of life where you do everything great, there will be a time when you will start slowing down. So I've learned that you need to balance your life when everything is great, at the same time you know someday it will not be. That is something which I see in animals day in day out. Like for example, the Burmese black panther. It was in its prime at some stage, now we see it slowing down. Likewise, everybody's life. Patience is something you learn when you're in the jungle. Most importantly, appreciation for this planet is something which is an obvious lesson that we learn. Some people still find it hard to learn that, but I think what nature teaches you is a purview of this globe as one, not political boundaries dividing places. Like for example, a snow leopard that lives in Pakistan is as exciting to me, even though I may be a patriot in other sense. I don't look at animals from the political boundaries perspective. So for me, the planet is one home, and that's what is important to protect. So that's what I think.
Trying to understand that it is your passion, it is a form of what you want to do, your calling and all that I understand. But tell us about what kind of challenges you faced to be where you are.
Okay, so there are two aspects to where I am today. One is as an individual, and two is as an entrepreneur. So I think both are things I'd like to mention. So as a photographer, I was an IT employee before. I moved out of IT and became a full-time photographer. So the challenges as an individual were different. So I didn't know of any wildlife photographer who would guide me when I was a 25-year-old guy wanting to move into photography full-time. I didn't have anybody to look up to or speak to or take advice and mentoring and stuff like that. So a bit of what I did was shooting in the dark. And also because I was at that time of my life where to take these audacious decisions, it could happen. If I had to do something like that today, highly impossible. So the challenges were, how do I make a career out of something that I don't know anybody else who has made, or very few people have even done that to a reasonable extent. So understanding career, understanding revenue, understanding money was one of the biggest challenges for me as a budding wildlife photographer in my 20s. So, of course, I learned a lot of my lessons in the initial couple of years itself, which helped me translate into an entrepreneur from being a self-employed wildlife photographer. So, I realized wildlife photography as a profession is not like wedding photography or portrait photographer or let's say interior industrial photographer, because for all the other kinds of photography there is a paying client. So for wildlife photography, who pays? This is something which was not clear when I took this plunge, and it was not clear because there was no answer. And over time, I realized there is nobody who will pay for you to go and click pictures in the jungle, come back and sell photos, because nobody is buying those pictures. Who needed wildlife pictures? Were people who either run tourism businesses where they use photos to promote their product and service, or people who are in NGOs and organizations which work for conservation, which anyway means they didn't have enough money to pay to a photographer. So, any which way I looked at it, wildlife photography was not a lucrative career as an individual. So, that was something which was a challenge. I spent a couple of years to ensure what I'm saying was true. It was not just opinions. I went through my own freelance phase of life, and once I realized that this world is getting towards a stage where there are more people who want to click photos than buy photos, then my mind started changing. Because I remember, let's say, when you go to an art exhibition and you see a beautiful Mona Lisa or something like that, and you say, wow, I like this painting, I'd like to put that in my boardroom, was the feeling in the earlier days. But after photography, especially digital photography happened, people go out to an exhibition and see a beautiful photograph of a tiger, let's say, of a beautiful landscape, and they would say things like, wow, I would like to go there and take this photo myself. So when this shift happened in people was my second learning, where I realized rather than me producing the product and trying to find buyers, I will produce people who want to do this for pleasure. That's when I started envisioning my small business, and I moved from just being a wildlife photographer who's hustling around all the time to a small time entrepreneur. So those were tough lessons in life that nobody told me. I learned to work like.
I think what toehold has made a name today, in the industry is just so significant. I think we can know why. Because the entire journey what you just described, that's it. Tell us about three things, very important things that you want budding wildlife photography to keep in mind. To see to see you as you are here in this position today, somebody is aspiring to be you. So what are the things that you want them to do?
Right. So I think let me give some practical tips. Right. When I started doing what I'm doing, there were hardly many people doing it. So I want youngsters who feel inspired looking at somebody like me and say, I want to do something like him. You need to do something like me, not exactly what I did. There's a huge difference between the two. Because what I did 15 years ago may be exciting then, but today it's like too many people do that now. So if you're starting out, you may take inspiration from the nature of what the person did. Don't do exactly the same thing because you're already 15 years late. Now you need to do something on the same lines but something different, which is right for this time of the world. And number two, I also have this advice to people. I want them to ask themselves this question of why do you do photography? If you do photography for pleasure, if you derive happiness out of it, then I want you to answer yourself and give yourself 5 reasons why you should make this a profession. It's not necessary for photography to be a profession for you to feel you've done something substantially good in that. At the same time, it's important for you to do it as a hobby, maybe as something which is a passion, maybe, so that you do it without monetary benefits in mind, or without burdening it with all your life's problems, like you need to pay your bills and all of that. If you do wildlife photography for pleasure, why do you have to add the pressure of life? Is one of the things that you need to answer. Those are the good tips.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think our audiences and young budding photographers would take so much from this talk. Okay, tell us about your favorite animal. Which animal would you like to kind of shoot again and again?
This is an answer which keeps evolving as I evolve as a person. I see more of this world. In the last 10 years, I have spent a lot of time in the Arctic regions, in the polar regions. So, without any doubt, the polar bear is my favorite animal. The reason being, not just the polar bear itself, but because of the area it lives in, the habitat, the environment, the world the polar bear lives in. So, I think the Arctic is an unimaginably beautiful place. So, because of the polar bear, I go there a lot, and I would love to photograph it again and again. Also, because the Arctic is like a mirror to this world's problems of climate change, global warming, and all of that. So, I feel we hear about these terms. I see these terms in front of my eyes in the Arctic region. When the glaciers are melting, the sea ice is not coming back every year in winter. So, I feel the polar bear is a lot more than just a special animal to me. It's a representation of so many issues of this world, and keeping all of those things aside, it's a gorgeous animal to see again and again.
Do you have a favorite photograph that you have captured? Share that moment with us.
Right. I mean, there are a few because I've been so many places over the time. One of my popular photographs of a polar bear on the sea ice from the Arctic, I'll share it with you. You can add it to this video. It's shot from a ship from a slightly higher angle. The horizon is a little, a curve. That's an interesting landscape photo with a polar bear in it. I have many other favorite photos of mine, depending on the species, from let's say snow leopard area where we go to photograph in the Himalayas, to our own Kabini, Bandipur areas, central India. I love Rajasthan, especially Ranthambore National Park, because it has amazing light, great bold tigers and ruins and architecture of the medieval India, with which you can see tigers. So that makes it special for us.
I'm so glad that I chose you as the first episode, being, unscripted icons. But honestly, when I ask you, what is the script to your life?
Part of the answer is in your question. It's very unscripted. At the same time, there is a direction, but I am a very extempore person, and I go with the flow. I know what my goals are, but I don't want to stick to a path which is so finite. I'm an explorer, so I will change my route and my directions and stuff like that. But I do know there are some high-level goals which are personal, there are high-level goals which are professional, there are some which are also starting to form as spiritual goals. So I'm evolving as a person, so will my goals evolve. At the moment, I have some big plans for my little business because once the business is on autopilot and it's doing well, I think there'll be time for me to think about personal, spiritual, and all of those things.
Jayant, I understand that there's a lot of patience that's required in one life. So, at any point of time, did you feel that I can't do this anymore? Let me get back to my corporate and just, live a life of comfort.
Right, right. I mean, honestly, I did have self-doubt many times. I shouldn't be faking it. I definitely had self-doubt many times. But then I was not doing this because of, what can I say? I was doing this because of passion. And that's what makes you get up every day at 4:30 if you have to go to the jungle. If it is just to put an Instagram post, you will do it one weekend, 2 weekends, and the third weekend you will realize, shall we try cycling? Shall we do mountain climbing? Shall we do something else kind of a thing? Excellence can be achieved if you keep doing the same thing and become better and better at it. I know that for sure. So still the pursuit is to be excellent and trying hard. So giving up is not a great idea because it will happen if you're not sure of what you want. You're just trying out a few things. And in my case, I had a lot of things at stake, so I had to give it more than 100%. I remember when I went home to Mysore, taking a Shatabdi from Bangalore from an IT job, I told my mom that I'm done with IT, I quit, and she started getting worried. And she told me, how many months will you try before you go back to an IT job? And I told her something, but I deep within knew I do not have a plan B because so I mean I know that many people share this as Ratan Tata's quote, but I know it's not his. They say I do not take the right decisions. I take decisions and make them right. So I am inspired by that. I have always been a decision maker. I've made a lot of bad decisions, but I learn from it, and I'm not afraid of taking more audacious decisions. I know I will fail in many of them, but I do know that I will succeed in a few of them. So that's what matters.
So it's coming back to your property. A beginner, when he's firm of going to the jungle and taking pictures, what are the essential things? Yes, this is a must that you must have the camera, okay, the kind of lens.
Yeah, I mean there are two things. One is equipment-wise, there are a few must-haves, which are pretty straightforward. People will learn that in a trip or two. There are some which are not so obvious but are must-have. Like that will be something that I want to talk about first. One is empathy for wildlife, empathy for nature, understanding what your role there is, understanding how much can you improve in an animal's environment or a zone, and at what time is it for us to back off. In other words, ethics of being a wildlife photographer. That's important to learn because there's no spectacular photo worth shooting at the cost of troubling the animal, right? It's like it's irony to do that. So I feel those are important things for people to learn. Otherwise, camera-wise, technicalities-wise, they need some medium telephoto lenses. Hopefully, a mirrorless camera these days, if not a DSLR, at least. Then I'm sure getting a good guide, going in a situation where you not just do a safari to see for a tiger or see looking for a tiger, you can also learn about different animals that live in a jungle. Like for example, if you go to Kabini, when people come back every day, everybody asks Sikta, Sikta, Sikta. The point they're asking is, did you see a tiger? Whereas they could have seen a cow, they could have seen wild dogs, they could have seen some amazing birds, some owls. So learning about wildlife is something which is a basic necessity. Then the disappointment of not seeing a tiger will reduce because they'll see a lot more than just the tiger. Tiger focus safaris is set up for disappointment because you'll not see it every day.
Who's your inspiration?
Oh, I have bundles of people. Each one inspires me in a different way. But photography-wise, I grew up watching a very famous photographer in Mysore called T.S. Satyam. He's no more now. He's a Padma Shri. He was a pictorial photographer. I think he also influenced my dad a lot. He would come home and I would see how he looked at photography in the black and white era. I got inspired by him a lot. But otherwise, over the years, I'm inspired by many people. One business-wise, one artistry-wise. One is a person who just the way they communicate and talks. One is somebody who handles themselves as a personality and stuff like that. I think I have a lot of people I learn from. Because because I don't think one person can teach you everything. Different people have different facets to their personality, and I'm an observer and I learn good things, maybe bad things subconsciously also, but I pick up good things from many people.
I'm sure you are an inspiration to all of us, especially yes to me as well, because your pictures depict so much. It's a larger than life, right? So, Jen, do you have any recommendations in terms of locations for our aesthetic wildlife photographers?
Sure. Depending on where they live and what kind of budget they have, I have a couple of things I'd like to tell people who want to start with wildlife photography. You don't have to go to a jungle. You can go to a lake near your house. Like for example, people who live in South Bangalore can go to Madibala Lake. People who live in North Bangalore can go to Hebbal Lake, for example. Likewise, in every town there will be some lake where you get birds, where you get the pelicans, where you get painted storks and stuff like that. The initial few months of your wildlife photography, you better go to these places, learn about your camera gear, learn about birds, the behavior, and all of that. And at some point, you can start going to small trips, like for example, a weekend in Kabini or a Pandipur, or you can go to places like Ranthambore, Vanapur, Tadoba. And if you have the budget and the time, I think a great place to start fine tuning your photography and hastening the learning curve is Africa. If you go to a place like Kenya, especially Masai Mara, in a week's time you will be able to learn making mistakes, making photos that you otherwise take 6 months to do in different parts of the world. So Africa is the top if you have the budget and time. Please get to that place. Otherwise, Tadoba, Ranthambore, Bandhavgarh, Kabini, are the ones. If you are budget, have a budget. If you are a student or if you're just beginning, you don't want to travel, spending a lot of money, go to any lake nearby, get into groups of bird photographers in your city. They will share a lot of places that you've not even heard of.
Fantastic. It's like, many people say that, okay, wildlife photography is a rich kids hobby. It's no more like that. Maybe like how Jayanth said, it's about your initiative that you want to proactively go ahead and figure out your opportunities. The last question would be, how do you talk to parents and teachers and elders in the family that, okay, yes, this kid is interested in something else, something different, something not scripted, that you are an icon for today. What do you want to tell to our seniors in the society and get more acceptance?
There are still some careers which look great, but they're actually not careers. They are a facade to what actually people do. Let's take wildlife photography itself. 95% of the wildlife photographers who call themselves wildlife photographers would be doing something else which is revenue generating. They could be businessmen, doctors, engineers, IT professionals. Wildlife photography is more of a hobby, but it seems like a career because they would love to be called a wildlife photographer. Interestingly, no other field you will see a hobby doctor, a hobby engineer, a hobby painter who paints for the houses. I'm not talking about an artist, kind of a thing, right? So all those professions are money-making professions. Wildlife photography can be money-making, but for that you need to think like a professional and not think like somebody who wants to do it for their own pleasure. So I feel elders are worried about youngsters getting into career options without understanding the whole 9 yards. Better talk to somebody who knows about the field. Give your child an opportunity to learn about it. Even though you feel that's not a great career, I feel parents should encourage kids to help them ask the right questions, learn about stuff. Like for example, if you say somebody wants to become a wildlife photographer, I'm happy to open the whole truth about wildlife photography to a 20-year-old and then make the 20-year-old learn about the answers than parents saying, no, that's not a good career, don't go there, do this, do that. Even if that is the truth, let the child or the teenager learn about the truth themselves, then you just tell them.
Absolutely, I think that's a heads up. You don't need a script, guys, to create your own path. That's what the whole entire series is about, unscripted icon. You heard from the icon himself that if you know what you're doing, if you're ready to fail and get back up, you can see the path, and here he is. Thank you so much, Rai, for listening.